Of December 8th to order. And Dave, Dr. Cash, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Buenas noches. Si alguien desea escuchar la interpretación simultánea en español, tenemos los aparatos disponibles por estas puertas dobles. Gracias.
Thank you. We have headsets for the hearing impaired. If you would like one, see one of our staffs. We can get them for you. Dr. Cash, introductions, proclamations, presentations, recognitions, and your report.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. With us this evening to provide the student report is Stephanie Elias from Alta Vista School. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah.
Well, wow. Get up here and say it right for the record, please.
It's Stephanie Elias. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you to the board and the community for being here tonight. First, I'm going to start with Alta Vista, and their students are reading The Things They Carried and working on a project centered around the Vietnam War. The unit includes analyzing protest music, reading primary sources, working with maps, and writing letters to soldiers. At La Cuesta, students will be taking the Common Formative Assessment in English Language Arts during Term 3. New electives begin this week, and students are excited about a few, especially create a skateboard, chess, and yoga at the beach. At Dos Pueblos, a canned food and toy drive will be through December 16th. Food will also be shared with Food Banks of Santa Barbara and Unity Shop of Santa Barbara. Toys will go to Community and Friends, a local Goleta grade school, and Unity Shops of Santa Barbara. First Equity and Excellence in Education meeting December 14th. Annual holiday package comedy performance will take place during the week of December 14th through 18th. At San Marcos High School, Royal Got Talent will take place Friday, December 11th at 6 p.m. in the auditorium. Annual Penny Drive to benefit the Santa Barbara Unity Shop will end December 18th. We'll make an appearance on the Unity Shop Telethon and KEYT on Saturday, December 12th from 4 to 6 p.m. The annual Vocal Department Winter Concert will take place at the San Roque Church beginning at 7 p.m. over 2 nights, December 14th and 15th. At Santa Barbara High School, December 17th to 18th, Dodgeball Tournament. Students on teams of 5 compete for first place to win a prize and their team name on the champion trophy. On December 12th, Winter Choral Concert, and on January 7th, a dance recital. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. This week's Hour of Code, we've done this a couple years in a row now. I want to remind everyone, it's a global movement encouraging students and adults to take advantage of a 1-hour online tutorial on how to code. The purpose really is to demystify coding. Tutorials are available in more than 40 languages. Most schools in our district are participating this week, and we know one of our schools, Adams Elementary, is taking advantage of the Star Wars excitement to have children work on special Disney and Lucasfilms tutorial featuring Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Some of us novices might want to start there, and you can find how to do it in eNews. Several elementary schools and all of our high schools were out in force at the 63rd State Street Holiday Parade last Friday. And it's really a bummer for us because that parade is held every Friday when all of you and myself are at CSBA, the Annual Education Conference, so we weren't able to see that, except I'm sure many of you, like I did, recorded it. and got to watch some of our kids. They all did a wonderful job. They got great cheers, and particularly the Santa Barbara High School Don Riders and the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy. And the Don Riders again this year are going to help facilitate your ride in the Milpa Street Parade this coming Saturday, where board members and the superintendent, myself, will be riding in slurries down Milpa Street. It'll be an awesome experience, and we can count on the Don Riders being in those great bicycles riding along next to all of you. At the back table, there are copies of the elementary school winter concerts, and the first ones begin tomorrow at Roosevelt, Cleveland, and Franklin, and I hope you make plans to attend. These performances are an important part of our music education program, the program that serves students in grades TK through 6. San Marcos High School's annual Poetry Slam is scheduled for Thursday, December 17th at 11:30 in the school library. That'll be a great event. And one thing that I know many board members are aware of, and I want our community to be aware of, at its first Dream Scholars Luncheon on October 25th, 2015, UC Santa Barbara celebrated its commitment to fostering a safe and supportive environment for students of diverse background. Currently, 35% of that university's total population of first-generation students come from underrepresented communities. But it always wasn't that way. And for one student, our own Barbara Kiani, qualifying wasn't the only difficult. Qualifying for admission wasn't the only challenge to overcome. And UCSB Alumni Association has posted an excellent article describing Barbara's journey to UCSB, her graduation, and her continuing journey on to MIT to earn a master's degree. And then, very fortunate for all of us in this community, her journey to the Santa Barbara School District, where she has worked so tirelessly on behalf of our students in our community for several decades. So it's a great story. There's a link in today's e-news, and I would encourage everyone to click on it and read more about the wonderful story about Barbara Kiani. And with that, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Board comments, correspondence? Dr. Paz?
I would just like to let the public know that a number of us went to California School Boards Association meeting last week. It just seems like yesterday. And that was a great opportunity for all of us to kind of improve our ability to be board members and do a better job at what we're doing. And so I thought it was a wonderful opportunity for us to gain some knowledge and learn about new ideas, unfortunately new laws sometimes, and just to also get to know each other a little more as well in terms of being board members. Not that we don't know each other, but it gives us the opportunity to interact in that space as well. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Ms. Limon?
We haven't met since last month, so in that time there was a special ed advisory committee, and so I had the opportunity to attend. And I know that in this boardroom, we've talked a lot about attendance and representation, and I really wanted to give a shout out to the special ed community because it was very well attended, and also it was really reflective of our school community. So I wanted to make sure to share that with everybody. Good conversation, but it was definitely had very good reflection of our school community and good conversation.
Under correspondence, I can't help but mention I got a letter from Dr. Cash resigning. And that's not news, I don't think, to anybody, but I'm sure we'll have chances to express our appreciation as we go forward the next 6 months. But I'll just say, you know, when we hired Dr. Cash, the number one survey question that was answered was, what do you want? And the answer was, we want a man with vision. And I think we got it. And I'm going to comment on some things. And if you hear on this a theme of what took place the last month, you will hear something very deep in Dr. Cash's soul by these things that have taken place in the last month that would never have taken place before. And I'll just start off with the IEE. Now, that was a little bit ago, just before the last meeting. But to know that 400 of our staff have gone through IEE, mainly in the term of Dr. Cash, and what that has accomplished. Last night at Adelante, they're doing better than ever. They're going to have up to 290 students in the near future, the max they can have. And Dr. Cash has supported Adelante from day one. I mean, he made sure that it not only stayed open, but it got better and better and has helped improve their facilities. And he's just been a great supporter to that academy. PETA, Just Communities Parent Involvement Through Dialogue and Action at Adelante. A whole slew of teachers and parents the parents went through a 9-week course, but they gave their information to the teachers and the board last week, and they support teachers. They love teachers. They think the teachers are fantastic. They want parent engagement. They want to know what their kids are going to do in junior high school. They want to make sure that the language possibilities continue in junior high school, Dr. Drade, and they don't know what it is. And so I think we need to do a good job of letting them know and reassure them that it's going to continue into junior high school. AOK Breakfast Partners. The AOK after school is absolutely phenomenal, and all the partnerships that have been created. You know, we wanted a man who knew the community and created relationships with the community, and AOK does that. I mean, that's what they celebrated, was all the partners at AOK. La Cuesta Forum. A couple of us met with a group. A lady was here reviewing La Cuesta to see if it qualified to be a model school. And lo and behold, it did. So they are now a model school. Well, you know, La Cuesta, there's a lot of things about La Cuesta and the Quetzal program, and there's no longer an El Puente, no longer an El Puente. That's because we're taking care of the kids ourselves, which, you know, El Puente didn't close and because of us. It closed because we didn't use them anymore. And that's Dr. Cash. That's Dr. Cash. Santa Barbara Junior High School, the Parent Project graduation. 37 parents graduated from a course showing them how to be more involved in schools. The entire program was in Spanish. It's fascinating to sit there and hear these parents and see them come up and get their certificate with their kids and families, and what a happy experience it is for them. And again, it's something that never would have happened before. Dos Pueblos, talking in class. To go and hear 25 students who have been working together for 3 full-day sessions talking about how they feel about school, how school can be better, what needs to be done to make their experience better. Caucasians and Hispanics working together for the betterment of the school. In addition, I had the opportunity to meet with the League of Women Voters, their education committee, and they just wanted to know about the reserve cap, the preschool take-back, the LCAP, LCFF, Common Core. We could have been there all day, you know, but great group of people. The maintenance breakfast, we met at Santa Barbara High School at 7 in the morning in the cafeteria, thanks to the food services of Nancy Weiss, who's right here. Great breakfast, but to meet with the maintenance people. Every single person in this environment, in this district, needs to be treated humanely and with the right attitude, and Dr. Cash brings that to us. Groundbreaking right after that, the shade structure at Santa Barbara High School. It was good to see that first dirt shovel done, and it was really good. And then I'll just say, you know, upcoming, probably later on the agenda, but ICANN holiday concerts are coming up at Franklin on the 11th and the West Side on the 18th. If you haven't seen one of their concerts, they're well worth going to and see what these kids are doing after school, 3 hours a day, music, sports, and studying at Franklin, and I believe at West Side too. Just a great program that Dr. Cash has supported, again, from day one. So you can see a theme in there that never has been here before, at least as far as I can remember, of things that we're doing with the Man of Vision. So thank you, Dr. Cash, very much.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Idelson?
Just before you move on, I want to acknowledge that there's a class here of students from Santa Barbara High, I believe, observing us for their political science.
Oh, boy.
And if you're one of those, raise your hand, just so we see.
Oh, my God. Okay.
And I got words of that through my son, so I didn't just...
And your son is raising his hand?
He did.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Idelson. Public comments?
Oh, we have an announcement of closed session.
Oh, announcement of closed session, okay. One item to report on public employee appointment. It was moved by Parker, seconded by Dr. Paz, to appoint Lacey Ann Preston as the new interim director of fiscal services.
And Ms. Preston is here. Could she stand and say hello? Congratulations.
And the young lady with you is?
My daughter, Haley.
Haley? Okay, thank you.
We have 2 public comments. The first is a trio of people. Ms. Laura Capps, Nancy Weiss, and Mark Alvarado.
Thank you to the board. We're just here to share a little good news. As many of you know, I work on a summer meal program to help support the work of the school district and the city and cities throughout the county. And just here to say thank you. The organization I work with is called No Kid Hungry, and they focus on summer because that's when hunger really spikes, when the kids that you're serving every day during the year are getting the wonderful food that Nancy does. And just nationally, to put it in perspective, 22 million kids rely on free and reduced lunch, but only 4 million get it in the summer. And that's about what we see here in the county. It's only about 20% actually show up and get the wonderful free meals of the summer. So about 3 years ago, No Kid Hungry brought me in, and we tried to get as much attention towards all these wonderful programs. There's 40 places throughout the county where any kid can get a free summer meal, and they're good, as we know. And so we try to boost those numbers up, and the good news is we did. This last year, we boosted it up 33% countywide, and that means that we served 211,000 meals, and again, not we, they did, over 160,000 the year before. That's quite an increase, and we just wanted to come and tell you about it. And the biggest reason for that increase all happened right here in the city and the school district, so I want them to tell you about that.
And can you start the clock?
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's going to be really quick. Ready? And 49% increase from last year. We served 120,000 meals this year to children, and we expanded our locations, and it was the help of the city, Mark Alvarado, Laura Capps. We have bonded over the last couple of years to really bring forward the importance of meals in the summer. And as Laura said, during the school year, we're feeding kids, but during the summer months, kids really don't have a place to go and get the great food that they're getting all year round, all school year. So during this last summer, we really expanded our locations. We reached places like Oak Park and Parque de los Niños again, and really did see an increase. We also expanded our breakfast program, and it was really a successful program because we're all working together. And so thank you, Mark Alvarado from the City Parks and Rec. And thanks, Laura Capps, for all of your great attention to a great worthy cause. And thanks to my board for allowing me to run amok and really, really do what is so important to me, which is feed kids. So thank you so much.
You good?
Thanks. Mark?
I'll say a couple.
You have about 30 seconds.
Really? Can I extend my time another minute, please?
Yes, you can.
Thank you, Mr. Herron.
I love the way you have it going up, Meg, not down.
Yeah. That's a good sign. Well, good evening.
This is an early Christmas for you.
Thank you, Dr. Paz. Good evening. My name is Mark Alvarado, and I'm the Senior Manager for Neighborhood and Outreach Services for the City of Santa Barbara. And it's an honor to be here before you. Being a local kid, I remember my grandfather telling me that one of the reasons why he survived is when there was a field to be plowed, that he was the first one to volunteer to plow that field. And that's kind of how Laura and Nancy came to me. They said, there's a field that we need to plow around hunger, and especially over the summer. And so this partnership is really, really critical for the success of our children, because they need to stay nourished over the summer. So we're really working hard to get more kids out of the house, to get more kids in line, to get the food. It's any kid under the age of 18, regardless of the background, and that's what's beautiful about this program. We do rock concerts every Friday, and we talked about expanding today. We've kind of run the tour. We were at county commissioners, or this morning we were at city council, and now we're here. And we just talked about expanding this model that we have. Some of you might know that we've been featured nationally, NPR, Good Housekeeping. Really, what we're doing together is really on the map, and people are calling us from all over the country, like, what are you guys doing? It's because of people like you and like people that next to me that really genuinely understand the need to get out there and roll up our sleeves. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and everybody have a good evening. Really quick with Dr. Cash, I've built a really strong relationship with Dr. Cash, a partner here in the community. And one thing, Mr. Herron, that I'd like to add to your list of things that he did was he created a three-way partnership between the city, Santa Barbara City College, and the school district for a dual credit culinary arts program serving alternative kids out of the West Side Neighborhood Kitchen. And Dr. Cash, it's a great program, and he did his research. He goes, I don't think there's anything like this going out around the country. I think we're new on this, and I think, well, maybe we are. And so his vision as well around that whole idea of serving kids in that area of nutrition and culinary arts is also something I wanted to add. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
You need to grow up, Nancy. Grow, yeah.
We have another public comment. Jeffrey Walker.
Could start the clock, Meg. Good evening, President Herron and members of the board, Dr. Cash, district administrators, and members of the public. My name is Jeffrey Walker, and it's my privilege to serve as executive director of ICANN, the Incredible Children's Art Network. As a private operating foundation for the last 10 years, ICANN has invested in providing high-quality visual art and music programs for the children of Santa Barbara Unified, particularly those least likely to receive them. Through sustained creative learning opportunities that emphasize both artistic excellence and access, ICANN now reaches nearly 3,000 students every week at the 8 elementary schools we serve, seeking to effect positive social change. We thought that before the line got too long, ICANN wanted to come here tonight to be among the very first, just the day after the announcement of Dr. Cash's retirement, to say thank you to him and to express our appreciation for his leadership of the district over the course of half of the lifetime of our organization. In yesterday's announcement, Mr. Herron eloquently stated that what we also believe at ICANN, that Dr. Cash has embodied a clear vision for every child, every chance, every day. ICANN would like to acknowledge Dr. Cash's dynamic leadership of a range of important forward-looking plans for the district, including those for facilities, technology, special education, local control accountability, as well as a strategic plan for visual and performing arts. In that connection, we want to highlight Dr. Cash's leadership in the long-term funding for elementary music education and the creation of the district's first ever Director of Visual and Performing Arts, as a position which is now so ably filled by Dr. Donna Ronzoni. So on behalf of ICANN's Board of Trustees, our advisory committee, our professional staff of 40 music and art educators and administrators, and most especially the 3,000 children that receive ICANN visual art and music instruction at SBUSD this week and next, thank you, Dr. Cash. You have inspired our community and helped to lead us all toward a future for every child, every art, every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Before we go into item D, Board, we have had a request to have item H6 follow H3. If there are no objections, let the next president know that's the order. Okay? Thank you. DA, acceptance of donations for December 8th, 2015. Do I have a motion?
Move to accept with gratitude.
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I will now turn over the meeting to Dr. Cash for our annual organizational meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And on behalf of the district staff, and certainly I'm confident your colleagues on the board, it has truly been an honor serving with you as the president during this year. You have brought an incredible vision, common sense, an understanding of how things work to the workings of the district and the school board. And you are a very difficult person to follow.
I'm glad you added that.
But I'm confident that whomever the board selects as the next president will do a great job, as they have had the opportunity to sit next to you and learn from you at the dais. You're also a very difficult person to get a gift for. And your colleagues understand how difficult that is. And in fact, we couldn't even get you a new gavel, so, because he wouldn't let us get him a new gavel. So we took your old gavel and we just added the next term for this past year onto the gavel, Mr. Herron. On behalf of the district staff who love and admire you, thank you so much for your year as president of the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Education. There you go.
My dad always taught me a penny saved is a penny earned, and everybody knows I want a 10% reserve, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't have any more money spent on a gavel. That'll put us over the top, right?
Board members, it's time to elect your next president and vice president. I declare the nominations open.
I'll move to nominate Dr. Pedro Paz as the next president of the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Education.
I will second that.
Are there any other nominations? I declare the nominations closed. All in favor of Dr. Paz, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Dr. Pedro Paz, the president of the Santa Barbara. Please begin this switching.
Oh, I'll take my water.
Take your water. I have to give you a new name tag, Mr. Herron. You're no longer the president. You're only a member now. I'll give that to you.
Thank you very much.
There's no parade, I'm afraid. There's no parade. Dr. Paz, do you have your? Well, with that switch, I declare the nominations open for vice president. Are there any nominations?
I move to nominate Ms. Gail Idelson as vice president.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? I declare the nominations closed. All those in favor of Ms. Gail Idelson as vice president?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Ms. Idelson. You are now the vice president of the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Education. Let me change that. All right, go team.
No. I was going to say, of course you realize that if I miss a meeting, you're it.
No, you need to be present, please.
Dr. Paz, you are now in charge.
So we move to designation of secretary clerk and assistant secretary clerk. And according to our board bylaw, the superintendent shall serve as the executive officer and secretary clerk of the board. The assistant superintendent of business services shall serve as the assistant secretary clerk of the board. These designations will be filled as required with the official report of this organizational meeting. You guys accept your positions and your roles?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And the next item is item C, designation of date and time of regularly scheduled board meeting. As it stands right now, we have the second and fourth Tuesday of each month commencing at 6:30 p.m. Have been designated as the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education with the following exceptions. July 2016, one meeting only, which is July 12th, 2016. November 2016, one meeting only, which is November 8th, 2016. And December 2016, one meeting only, which would be on December 13th, 2016. Yes.
With your permission, Dr. Paz, my suggestion is that we move the November date from the 8th to the 15th, since November 8th is Election Day this coming year. And that I was looking at the calendar, I don't see any holidays or anything else that would impede it being the 15th instead, if that's acceptable to the rest of the board.
Any discussion? Do we need to take action on this item?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Then is there a motion to change that date from November 8th to November 15th?
I'll make the motion as stated.
Second?
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Idelson, second by Ms. Parker. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda is appointment of representative and alternate to elect members of the Santa Barbara County Committee on School District Organization. The Board of Education must select one of its members to serve as district representative for the purpose of electing members as required of the County Committee on School District Organization. An alternate also need to be chosen. I'm currently the board member that's a representative, and I am happy to serve in that role for the next year. But we do need an alternate. I don't remember who the alternate was at this point.
I'm currently the alternate.
Okay.
Since we didn't meet, I have no problem doing it again.
That's an easy one. And it has not met since I've been on the board. So I think we've only had elections via mail. Next item on the agenda. Do we need to take action on that one?
Yes.
Okay.
When in doubt, take action.
I'll move to keep the existing members as the representative and alternate to elect members of the Santa Barbara County Committee on School District Organization.
I'll second it.
A motion made by Ms. Parker, second by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next is item E, board member committee appointments. And we have a number of different district committees, community groups, and a couple of charter school liaisons. I know all the board members received their current committee responsibilities and duties, but does anyone want to change? No?
I'll make a motion to keep our committee memberships as is unless anybody opposes.
I'll second it.
Motion made by, any discussion? Motion made by Ms. Limon, second by Ms. Idelson. Everyone's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Makes it easy. We are moving to item F, the consent agenda.
Dr. Paz?
Yes.
Just for the sake of the public, do you mind if I read the
Sure.
committees and who's on them?
Be my guest.
I think some people may want to know that. The Graduation Requirements Committee, Ms. Limon and Ms. Idelson. Sustainability Committee, Ms. Idelson and Dr. Paz. Wellness Committee, Ms. Idelson and myself. The Staff Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, Ms. Limon and Dr. Paz. The Audit Committee, Dr. Paz and myself. The Board Liaison to Charter Schools, Adelante, myself. Santa Barbara Charter, Ms. Idelson. Board Liaison to Community Groups, Santa Barbara County School Boards Association, Ms. Parker. Santa Barbara Education Foundation, Ms. Parker. South Coast Youth Gang Task Force Leadership Council, Ms. Limon, with Dr. Paz as the alternate.
Thank you, Mr. Herron. Moving on to item F is the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull anything on the consent agenda?
I'd
Yes.
like to pull F4. No, excuse me, F5, sorry.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Limon. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We move to public hearing. Since there is no public hearing, we will move to the action agenda items. First on the action agenda is approval of resignation and appointment of new member to Measure B 2012 Parcel Tax Citizens Oversight Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, or Dr. President.
No, you could just say president. That's too many titles.
Susan Case has resigned her 2-year term, which expired in September 2016. She was the Santa Barbara Education Foundation representative. Victoria Juarez, a member of the Santa Barbara Education Foundation, has stepped forward to fill the foundation seat that's previously been occupied by Ms. Case. So we are recommending that the board approve that appointment.
Members, any comments, discussion? Someone like to make a motion?
Sure. Ms. Case, Ms. Juarez is, well, we really thank Ms. Case for her service, but Ms. Juarez is going to be a great person to step in. And I will move to approve the resignation of Ms. Case and the appointment of Ms. Juarez to the Measure B 2012 Parcel Tax Citizens Oversight Committee.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Move to item on the action agenda, item number 2, approval of the traditional and year-round calendars for 2016-17 school year.
As board members are aware, unless the calendars are negotiated prior to the August 30th date, they remain substantively the same from year to year. Obviously, taking into consideration the dates and days change from year to year. And these two calendars fill that boat since no negotiations took place prior to August 30th, except for the year-round schools will also have a pupil-free day on what we're now calling the San Marcos Staff Development Day, so they will be able to attend that with their traditional year colleagues.
Members, any comments or questions or discussion?
I'd like to say having the week at Thanksgiving has been very well received, I think, by the community, and that this is the second year we've done that.
Yes.
And so now we're going on the third. I think it's been very successful as far as that goes.
Ms. Parker.
You just never know what surprise might come, and I know that 2016 is a leap year, so I'm kind of thinking, oh, what surprises are going to be with that. But I also appreciate seeing that elementary parent conferences are before the Thanksgiving break. And I will just note for the public that the first day of school will be Wednesday, August 24th, 2016, and the last day will be Thursday, June 8th, 2017.
Mr.
For the
Herron.
traditional.
I'll just comment, just for the future, I heard a lot of the public at least want to talk about, because of the heat, moving the schedule back a week, having it started in September rather than August. And I don't know if that's possible, but you say by next August. I guess I would just put that out there for the public, if anybody has any comments on that they would like the negotiating people to know, both from the union standpoint and from the district standpoint. That at least to be looked at in response to a lot of comments that I've had from the public. Thank you.
Any other comments? Someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the traditional and year-round calendars for the 16-17 school year.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Limon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda is approval of proposal and letter of agreement from Fairbank, Maslin, Mauldin, Metz, and Associates, FM3, to provide opinion research services for the Santa Barbara Unified School District. Dr.
Ms.
Cash.
Jute.
Dr. Cash. So to prepare to launch the 2016 fiscal capital facility campaign, staff requested proposals for an opinion research services. We got 5 different agencies, and the staff selected 3 to be interviewed, and we found that FM3 was the best fit for our district. They've had a very successful with other districts such as Carpinteria, Cuesta College, Ventura County College, Community College. All of them were on those. Those are the local districts that they've been involved with. And we're here to answer any questions and hopefully accept them as our opinion research service provider.
I believe we have some public comment.
Yes. We have a public comment by Dr. Lanny Ebenstein. Public is still seeing this.
Members of the board, Dr. Cash, first of all, thank you for your service to our community. Dr. Cash, congratulations, I guess, on your retirement after many years of service to our community and other school districts. I want to speak to both this item and the following one. I think that there is not a problem with attempting to have opinion polling to help you determine whether or not a bond should be placed on the ballot, and to give you some idea of what the public is thinking about any bond proposal. At the same time, I think that it's important to note that any opinion polling is only going to be a snapshot of what people think at a current point in time. The Santa Barbara City College bond was placed on the ballot in 2014, a few months before it was placed on the ballot, had something like a 72 or 73% support, and it ultimately only wound up with 50%. So it's something that it's not the case that what an opinion poll says is necessarily how an election is going to transpire. However, having said that, I think that I'm in favor of this proposal. I think that it's a good idea to try to have opinion research services to take a look at what people are thinking. On the next item, H6, I will have somewhat different comments, and I'll hold those comments till that time. At the same time, too, my concern is that I think that the community is looking for a certain type of bond, which is a targeted bond, a bond that is focused on removal of portables from elementary school sites in particular, and that ultimately it's up to the board to show leadership and say this is what we think is what is best for the community, rather than following the results of an opinion poll. Once again, an opinion poll might have 72% support in favor of something, but that's with a rather low information base. So it's something that I think that it's more important to try to put the best proposal before the public, and I would say that
30 seconds.
Thank you. I would say that an opinion poll is merely a tool in helping you to do that, and it's an important tool, but I don't think that it's determinative, and I don't think you necessarily should follow the poll in terms of ultimately it's what you think is in the best interests of the district. So with those thoughts, that would be my thought on item H3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ebenstein. Anything else you want to add, Ms. Jute?
No, I'm just here to answer questions.
Members? Yes, Ms. Parker.
Thank you. I appreciate what Dr. Ebenstein had to say, because we've lived that ourselves in terms of polling results. They only go so far. I just wanted to make very clear, because the background on this is the opening sentence is to prepare to launch a 2016 capital facilities campaign. And I personally really see this as to prepare to possibly launch a 2016 capital facilities campaign. I think it's really appropriate for us to go forward with polling at this time, because I don't know where I stand, and I think it's very important to get these at least guidelines. That was rather depressing, and I know that these polls can be sometimes misleading, so we need to get wider community input as well. But I think this is a good first step. I just want to be really clear that this is not about approving a capital facilities campaign.
That's correct.
Mr. Herron.
Yeah, I'll add to that a little of my thoughts, because number one, I agree totally with Ms. Parker. In 2010, we went through this, and yes, the survey showed us the hot buttons, what the public wanted, and we massaged it to fit what we wanted, because we really didn't know exactly what we wanted back then, and so we looked at it from that standpoint. This time around, this is a sort of a canned presentation, trying to fit in some things, but when it talks about doing a survey to find funding priorities, it's just like Dr. Eberstein said, it could come up with stuff that didn't hit our radar screen, and maybe on purpose, but I'm on the standpoint, we want portables. I mean, I think we've all agreed that that's a very, very, and so I would rather see a survey that talks about, hey, the district wants portables, and go into that kind of a questioning, and not get into a lot of maybe other items, because that's not where we've set our priorities. We've set a list of priorities, and that's what I think we need to focus on and push for. The other thing I really don't like about this is it even has the audacity to talk about an $848 million bond, and saying they're successful, that they could do it even if it takes successive bonds. That's not a message I want the public to hear. I don't think any of us even remotely think $838 million is feasible, even want to discuss it. I don't want headlines saying, and I've already seen it in some of the articles, hey, this is just the first step. Look, they want $838 million. We're going to be hit with bonds year after year after year, and we're going to get killed in the public, and yet they will pull out this document and use it, I think, against us. What I want to know, and in the past, I think, Ms. Jade, you can comment on this, when we were talking about surveys and bonds and parcel taxes, we had some idea of what the economic effect was going to be. I mean, we had some numbers. We had people who had given us numbers of what it was going to, well, we promised we wouldn't change the tax rate, but we know where that went. But we had numbers in front of us, and we don't have any numbers as even what the cost per $100,000 is, and yet we're going to be asking voters.
I want to make it really clear that the questions that are going to be asked of voters are not going to be any of what you've suggested to this particular point. They will be very sharply focused on the facilities priorities that the board has identified. They'll be very specifically tied to the idea that there is no increase, or if they or measuring what increase might be acceptable in very small increments. There's absolutely no way we're testing $800 million, $400 million, $300 million in any of the questions. You have made that all eminently clear in numerous conversations. So I can tell you those questions won't be part of the poll.
I can understand that, but we have a document that this company is saying they can do. So, and then, I have just a personal problem with $19,000 for polling focus groups of 10 women and 10 men, and spending $19,000 to do it. We could get 20 people right here and have a nice conversation for far less than $19,000. I would need to be convinced that that's money well spent, and I don't know if anybody has any comments on, I mean, they say it's great. We've never done that before that I know of. It just seems like a huge expense, and, as I said, a penny saved is a penny earned, but you all know my feelings on that.
So if I could comment, that was put in there because and I obviously, at least from your perspective, didn't hear correctly, I asked them to include focus groups because what I thought I heard board members say was they wanted a lot of information from people, qualitative information from people about what they were thinking in relationship to any potential facilities improvements. So, and that's certainly something that doesn't have to be part of their work. It's in addition to it. They don't do it with every single district that they work for.
Ms. Limon and then Ms. Idelson.
So thank you. It's interesting. I actually, in this survey, I'm not necessarily looking for facilities priorities, and I'm glad that that's been clarified, that we have our facilities priorities. We've gone through our process. But one thing I am absolutely looking for is to get a sense and kind of gauge our community as far as the level of trust, the level of commitment to see this through. It's debt of some sort, and I think it's an investment, though, more importantly. So I think it's important to get that, and there's a lot of things happening, not just locally, but at the statewide as well. And so for me, one of the reasons that I'm interested in this is also knowing, well, how is this going to fare with potentially 15 other ballot initiatives, which could be there could be something along the line of facilities bonds at the statewide level. And so I think that that's what the information that I'm trying to gauge from this. And so for those reasons, I would rather see something a little bit more formal, because I think, as been said, that will feed into my deliberation on whether or not we should even go forward. I think at this point we have not said officially that we're going forward. We need this kind of information to assess whether it makes sense for us to go forward in 2016.
Ms. Idelson.
I also was curious with what we learned at the conference and a proposal by the state for a facilities ballot measure. How would we relate to that? And then in prior bond measures, I wasn't here, on the board, but was this the same process that was done? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
In a similar way?
Yes.
Okay.
Without the focus groups.
Okay.
Focus groups is new.
Okay.
And what the answer to your question about the state facilities bond, we have a list of school sites that are in the queue if there is a state facility bond. So if there is one, we will get more money from the state. That's correct, Mr. Young.
So that would be in addition to a local bond?
Yes.
Yes.
And that would not be affected by a local bond?
No.
Okay. And on some of the presentations we went to last week, there was talk of, maybe presenting this as a matching, like locally to match the state funds or bring up something like that. So would that be discussed in a proposal like this?
I'm sure they'll discuss anything that we ask them to.
It'll be part of the polling,
Okay.
for sure.
Sure.
I think that the concern that Mr. Herron had about the focus groups is the cost. I'm not adamantly opposed to the concept of having focus groups because you get more qualitative data out of it. I think the cost is a concern. It's a concern for me because it did sort of open my eyes, like, whoa, I've done focus groups. I don't remember them costing that much. But of course, I try to get a good sense of what was in the proposal and why they're charging what they're charging. But still, it's something that I would have a concern with, that I would, if I as a board member had seen the cost ahead of time, I would have probably questioned that and maybe given some direction to staff in that regard and say, hey, would you ask a question? Would you ask this? So that's my concern right now at this point in time. I think some of the questions that were raised by my fellow board members in terms of the sort of content in the survey, I would agree with. I think at the end of the day, it really is a tool for us to decide whether to move forward, and I think that's it will be an important tool for all of us because at this point in time we have a lot of things in flux, including the stuff that's happening at the state. But those are my thoughts. Any other comments, questions? Ms. Parker.
Well, just a couple. One question is just, is this, we aren't meeting again until January, which is why I'm kind of hesitating on even the idea of postponing this in terms of maybe getting a revision without either limiting focus groups or without the focus groups. So I'm wondering about that.
I would say eliminate the focus groups if that's a cost problem.
Okay.
And conduct the polling.
So we could move forward with that and then maybe add in focus groups later if we felt that there was a need to it. And I'll just point out that we have to be so careful about what we do versus what an outside company does, because we can't get directly involved with campaigning for a bond if we were to decide to go forward with one. So I just want to be, I mean, otherwise I would send Dr. Pedro Paz out to do it because he has experience, and apparently he's less expensive. But that's why if we do it, you know, we need to go outside.
I can answer that question. Can't do it. Won't do it. Any other comments, questions, Ms. Idelson?
Then I'll go.
Do you have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the FM3 proposal and letter of agreement with the exclusion of the focus groups, and with that being something that we revisit possibly in the future.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Limon. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next on
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next on the action agenda is H3, which we're now moving up to be H4. Approval, proposal, and agreement from Clifford Moss LLC for general obligation GO bond feasibility, and planning services.
So you're doing H6?
Yes.
It's H6, yeah.
Okay. And we have public comment also.
Dr. Ebenstein.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very troubled by this agenda item, and it's something that it's very concerning to me to see in a document before you something from a firm that says, we employ full campaign service capabilities, including campaign strategy, campaign development, fundraising, and budget. And whether it's intended that that would be something that they would do, potentially being contracted to do after they had done other work, or they would develop a blueprint for a campaign outside of the 88 days that then others would implement, and irrespective of their success elsewhere, or whether they've put forward similar materials elsewhere, I just think it's undemocratic. It's something that this is government trying to influence an election, and it's something that if we're into pushing the envelope, why not just put out a resolution to give the campaign committee $100,000, you know, for voter information or something like that. I'm being facetious when I say that, but the point is that this isn't how bond elections have historically been done in the United States, and I recognize that that's the direction that public agencies have moved in recent decades, recent years, but I think it's the wrong direction. And so I guess my question to you is that when you're approving a document that on its page 20 on which is included in the scope of services, when the scope of services being provided includes campaign strategy, campaign team development, and fundraising budget, what services are you anticipating public funds are being utilized to support? And it's something that if the point is no, that's all going to be after after we do our planning, and that, you know, these are services that we would provide under that time frame. Is it appropriate to have a committee or a consultant who you have had paid for at public expense then become the consultant for the committee? Is that what they're proposing under this proposal? So I guess my question is, what do those terms, campaign strategy, campaign team development, and fundraising and budget, mean in this proposal?
30 seconds.
Thank you. What I would suggest is that I don't think there's any reason to act on this item item tonight in terms of, I think that as far as polling goes, I can understand. That's a process that you want to start. You want that information. It's one of the bits of information that's going to help you to make a decision. But you don't even know you want a bond at this point in time. You haven't made that decision. You don't know it's feasible. Maybe only 40% of the people will say they want it. So the point is, I think that it's premature of itself, and I have very concerns about whether this is a campaign document. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Cash?
I have nothing to say.
Ms. Parker?
Yes, I completely agree with Dr. Ebenstein, and that is, just this feels premature for two reasons. One, that really I want the polling to go first before, this seems like you're committing to a campaign when we don't know what, if or what type or at all. So this feels premature in that way, and also this looks like a great company, but that it might be more appropriate for it to go to any, something that comes out of a campaign committee that's separate from the district, that's not being influenced by district funds. So it seems to me that this is something that maybe should come forward in the future, and to that group, whatever that group ends up being, if it comes into existence at all.
Ms. Limon?
And I actually would agree with that. As far as I was going to ask about the timeline and whether we could get the feedback first and then approve this once we have the feedback, once we know whether we're moving forward and what implications it had, whether we voted on this tonight or not. And then, so I'll start there. Implications, thoughts about timeline.
Well, at this particular point, based on the questions that have been asked, and it makes sense for us to take it off the agenda and bring it back at a later date.
I want to clarify, though, one thing that these companies do is also get a message out about your needs for, it's not just, hey, vote for the bond. It's what our needs are in the school district. They present it a certain way, and it's almost like an informational piece for a long time, you know, and I want to get that clear, because it's not just, then when they go into with, if we're successful and these Clifford Moss moves into with the campaign, that's all for them, and they help the committee run the campaign. But this is kind of like a advertising for the school district, sort of.
It's clear to me that we have issues that we need to address and questions that board members have for us to answer before we would bring this back. So we'll take it off.
Well, I'd like a couple comments. In the past, a lot of the stuff that this company says they're going to do, we've had done by attorneys and by our financial advisor, and by, I mean, we've got legal language for the ballot, and we've massaged the 75 words, and we've never had a company like this be involved in that. It's always sort of been more internal. We did, in 2010, for that bond issue, we didn't get the results of the survey until March sometime, and we still managed to get a grassroots citizen campaign. I guess I just really question, this is an all-out war document, and that's not Santa Barbara, you know. So I would want to know a lot more information, Dr. Cash, like you say. This is a battle plan, and Santa Barbara's not a battle location. I think City College learned that, and we need a grassroots campaign. So I'm glad we're going to take it off.
Ms. Limon?
So since this is coming back, I'll just ask a question that I know I'll have if this comes back, which would be, I'm curious to know who else they would be working with in 2016, and if they have that information. As far as, I know that we're not the only district statewide. I think people are feeling like there's going to be more people voting than 2 years ago, and so there's all these things I'm hearing regionally, statewide, and I'm just curious, you know, would we be number 5 of their clients or 40? So,
well, I know
that kind of
I know that the Napa board approved them recently, and they're working with Napa.
No. So if they have that information
That's all I
available,
know,
so
yeah,
I'd
sure.
love to have that as well,
We can
if
get
that
that.
comes. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I don't think we need a motion. I think, Dr. Cash, you got some direction?
Yep.
All right. We will move on to item number 4, first reading and approval of Exhibit 1330 Civic Center fees. I think that's Ms. Chate.
Thank you. So we brought the Civic AR 1330 back a couple of times recently, and we changed all the fees a while back on September 21st. And I met with Dr. Drotti and the athletic director and the water polo coach, and they made a good point about the pool being so much smaller at San Marcos than the other two pools, that they were losing a particular group of water polo. And so we decided that we would present to you a reduction in the fee from $76 to $40. And we were hoping, or they were really hoping, that you would approve that tonight.
I'll be happy to make the motion.
Any other discussion or comments, Ms. Parker?
Oh, Mr. Herron, I think you might need to have full disclosure of your connections with San Marcos Water Polo. I will second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Herron and a second by Ms. Parker. Any other further discussion or comments? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pushed by a San Marcos supporter.
I got lobbied heavily by my daughter.
We are moving to item number 5, positive certification of first interim financial report for fiscal year 2015-16. And I know this is Ms. Chate, and I think we're all ready.
This is the last time you'll have me here. I'm done after this one. So the Santa Barbara Unified presents its first interim 2015-16. And for the first interim, projects a fund balance in the general fund that exceeds the state's recommended minimum reserve requirement of 3%. It does say SBUSD, but it should say state. However, it is 3.48 below the board's 10% reserve goal. And I just want to keep bringing that up because the board did approve a 10% increase, or to bring the reserve level up to 10%. Few things, again, that we've gone over. I want to remind the board of the following items that are going to happen in the near future and are represented in the multi-year projections. That's the parcel tax, sales tax, and use tax all expires in 16-17 is our last year for both of those items. In 17-18, we have the ROP from the county. They will no longer help fund that program, and we'll have to take on a little over $500,000. And also the income tax for the earnings over $250,000 expires. That's the Prop 30 money. They are discussing a possible re-upping that Prop 30, so we're hoping that stays in the picture for 2016, but that will be yet to be seen. Also, and again, I bring it up every time, PERS and STRS increases for up until 2021 will be at 39% for retirement on those two items. The reserve cap, just to give you a little information, there's still no reserve cap because the state has not pulled all the triggers, and we're all very happy about that at this time. There is work up there about reducing or increasing the reserve percentage to a flat rate, but that too has not gone anywhere, and we'll see in 2016 or the outlook on education is really good. We've done well this year with funding, and even though for 16-17 the governor's budget will be coming out in January, the first look at it, and basically his projections are way lower than the LAO, and that's typical of Governor Brown. And what he will do is hit us with more one-time funds instead of putting it on Prop 98. Which is fine. I mean, I understand he's being conservative, and I like conservatism, but I would really like to have the money here for the district also on an ongoing basis. So we'll see more of that in January. So let's go on to page 3, and we'll talk about our unrestricted revenues. Our local control funding formula amount went down about $1.5 million. And there's a couple of things that had that affected that, and one is our unduplicated pupil count went down. Oh, okay, you want me to wait?
No.
Okay. The unduplicated pupil count, just keep it going. It went down about 700 kids, and I believe Dr. Ramirez can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you redesignated 1,000 EL students, which have an effect on our unduplicated pupil count, which this is a good thing. I mean, not financially, but it's a good thing for kids. And also our enrollment.
I think Dr. Ramirez had a comment.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if you need.
There you go.
I wasn't sure if you wanted a response, but yes, that is accurate.
Thanks.
And I just wanted to add too that, on that same item that we're looking at, a decrease in the number of, students from 14,330 to 14,150.
Yep.
And one of the things I wanted to note is that I was in a meeting today with representatives from Santa Barbara City College, and they actually have a decrease of students of 4.7% this year. So I think it's local that we're seeing this reduction. And, as City College draws a lot of students from local, our school district in particular, I think it's being reflected at City College. Just wanted to note that.
Yeah, I was up at the CBO symposium up in Monterey a while back, and I was discussing this with a lot of CBOs, and in certain areas it's going crazy, like Santa Maria Bonita. They're growing still, and they're in farmland. So, and because another district was telling me they lost people because of the drought and they weren't producing, and so they were moving on somewhere else. So we're not a big farm area, but I'm just wondering if the cost of living or the cost of renting and things like that have an effect on our students and their families. Because, we had these children in our school district, and they left. I mean, double digits in first through second grade, or sixth grade. So that was a shock to me. And I'm hoping I've lowered the trend for live births and from 11% to 9% to try to get a better handle on it, just to see if it's a trend or if it's just a fluke. So more to come on that. The only other fairly large is in other state, the increase, and that's just to reconcile the one-time mandated funds. When we receive those, or when we thought we would receive them, the dollar amount was not locked in the governor's budget, but now it is. So that was an increase for us. Unrestricted expenditures, the salary and benefits, the net effect was about $158,000 less than it was at first interim overall. Books and supplies, we did increase some of that for $500,000 worth of drought tolerance for the one-time funds, and then some additional supplies. And then in services and operations, we took some of that one-time funds and put it more towards $1.5 million worth of deferred maintenance. We probably won't be able to spend all of that this year, but they're working hard at trying to accomplish that.
Excuse me, and is that in line with our maintenance plan?
Yes, we went through the maintenance plan, and we're starting to work on that and start to fund some of the projects in that, along with our regular routine restricted maintenance and our deferred maintenance.
The goal is to fund that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that's what we got that plan for, and I'm glad to see that it's not just sitting on the shelf, we're using it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, the districts need it, the sites need it. Our contribution went up a little bit, as you can see from the ECAT team. That was our early childhood assessment team that we're now having in special ed to take back to preschools in the future. And plus, we had an increase of, we had working out of class for paraeducators, and we had some teachers and some more paraeducators. Let's go on to the unrestricted side. As usual, at adopted budget, we always decrease our federal funds by 10%. They've gotten those back now, and that's why the revenue increased. And then at the adopted budget, the education effective grant of $1.14 million was not in the budget. So, because we weren't 100% that was going to happen. See, I can really clear a room when we're talking. So, anyway, now it's in the budget, and we need a plan and an approval before we can start spending that money. So that's just sitting there.
Those staying are the future accountants.
There you go. And again, in local revenue, we had a slight increase due to the promissory notes that we received from different PTAs and donation-type accounts. Salaries and benefits, again, represent the donation accounts and the federal funding. Same with the books and supplies and the services. It's mostly happening in the sites' budgets. And the one I want to note here is that on the transfers in and out, we were instructed to put I lost my train.
Prop 39.
Yeah, the Prop 39 funds, thank you. All of a sudden I was thinking of something else. So yes, the Prop 39 funds went into the general fund, and they should have gone in Fund 40. So we moved them out, and that's why that's the $1 million you see there. And the next page is the district reserve and net ending fund balance, the graph. Keep going. There we go. So it was interesting. This graph only shows back to 2007-8, but I want to show how, I know we show this all the time, and you know it looks really good that we're getting our reserves up and everything, but just remember that $10 million back in 2007-8 was on a budget of about $120 million. We're now on a $147 million budget, and we have about a $13 million reserve. And that, as you guys have always mentioned, that this has really helped us in those bad times. And I want to just reiterate how important it is for a reserve level. We heard a lot of stuff up in Monterey about, yeah, times are good now, but if Prop 30 doesn't go through and things starting to flatten out, and our expenditures are going to increase because of STRS and PERS and increases and things like that. So, and our COLAs outpace the increase to our STRS and PERS. So it's nice to have some money to dip into when we're caught off guard by something else that takes up that money. So I just want to keep bringing that forward, how important a reserve level is. So the components of ending fund balance. So I want to make sure that you understand that in the first interim column, that we always, with our ending fund balance, we'd like to put in about $1.5 million now to make sure that if we do hit a deficit, we're accounting for that. And then the $4 million for one-time plan, that's part of the mandated money that we haven't spent, that's left over. So we had the 1.5 for deferred maintenance, we had 500,000 for the drought, and we have a possibility of putting in for the retirement, the irrevocable trust, another $500,000. Then we go down to Fund 17, and it's just pretty much the same. We have our $100,000 each year to the soccer fields or the athletic fields, the replacement of the turf fields. We always budget for carts and trucks. And we have an additional $200,000 going in there from the self-insured fund. That is the tail end of that fund. It was a workers' comp fund we had 1 million years ago, and we still have to keep a little bit of money in there in case somebody else comes up with some workers' comp claim or continues on to that claim. But we moved some of the money out because it's not being used very much. It's not.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
On the, I'm just getting, In the budget, there was 500,000 deferred maintenance, and in the first interim, there's nothing. Is that because we have 1.5 someplace else? Or?
Yeah, that's because it's in the budget.
It's in the budget now,
It's
so-
not
okay.
in the components of ending fund balance
Okay,
anymore.
good.
It's actually been expensed.
Yeah. And then when you see the figure, reserve for economic reserve uncertainties, $5,678,000, is that the line that refers to the 3% state mandated reserve?
Yes, it's a little higher
Yeah.
than the actual 3% reserve.
Right, but the 3% would be 4.45 million, so we really have over the state mandated about $1.2 million. If we spent $1.2 million tomorrow, we'd be right at the 3%.
Don't say that to him.
No, but I mean, is that a true statement? I mean, that,
Yes, that's a true statement.
yeah, so if we did something to spend $1.2 million, we would be below the 3%
Yes,
and not near the 10%.
exactly.
Thank you.
Well, can I add something that came up in our delegate meeting for the California School Boards Association, that many school districts were actually not allowed to use that 3% in this last economic recession. So your threshold for actually being able to use it is pretty high. So in some ways, the thought around school board members was that we have to think of that 3% not as true reserves that you're able to dip in, but as money you will not be able to touch.
That's my point.
Right. So I think that it echoes some of this concern of, well, if the reserve is 6%, capped at 6%, it's really 3% because you can't touch that 3%. And even after this last recession where things were really tough, folks weren't allowed to touch it.
Well, it's called a state recommended minimum reserve. It doesn't say you can't use it, but I don't know, your qualification, your approval Yes,
would then,
you would have a
it would be
negative
And
qualification.
yes, so, I mean, you're allowed to use it, but then you have a negative qualification, and that has
Right.
consequences.
That does have consequences. You know, $8 million wouldn't be enough for 1 month payroll. We're closer to 9. So $3 million won't get us through a payroll run. So we talked a little bit about our ADA, which is decreasing slightly, and I still haven't figured that out, but I have lowered my projections over the next 3 years. I want to see what happens for 16-17 and 17-18. So I kept 18-19 and 19-20 and 20-21 the same, because I just want to see what's really happening. If we see the same drop next year, I will definitely work on those outer numbers. You see where, at what level, in the next one, the enrollment projection grades by grade span, and then the unduplicated pupil count. Again, I kept it steady out the next 3 years because I don't know what is happening, and we're really going to try hard to get our students to fill out forms that can help us possibly boost feeding our children on the free and reduced meal plan. And I want to let you guys know that what we get funded on is a 3-year rolling average of unduplicated pupil count, so it kind of softens the blow. So we'll be funded at about 52% and not 50%. But we would like to get it back up to at least 55%.
What kind of results did we have in the effort to get more people signed up this past year?
Well, food service sends out to every single student in the district after July 1 the full packet. That's by law, federal law. So she has to do that. The food service has to do that. And then what we try to do is we put out the HID form, which is a household identification income data form, to all the Provision 2s, because I have to distinguish between Provision 2, everyone eats free. So I have to distinguish in my unduplicated pupil count, does Johnny really entitled to eating free? He still will always eat free, but he may be taken out of my unduplicated pupil count because he doesn't qualify. So we've tried to find out who those children are and take them out of the unduplicated pupil count. But we've also said, hey, you haven't filled out the form, the free and reduced meal plan form. Can you at least tell us if you don't qualify? Or can you please send this, Nancy and I sent out a letter together that says, please fill out this form, your school will benefit, blah, 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 blah. Not much luck.
Okay.
So I met with Ms. Capps and Nancy and some people from Morphala, and we're going to try to work on a plan. We may make it a mandated form that they have to complete some sort of form to at least identify who we're not getting to fill out those forms. But it's crazy, and it has to be as of a certain day in October. So we keep trying every year.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Do you know the reasons? Like, have you heard some of the reasons why they're not filling out those forms? I just imagine that there's probably a variety of reasons, and not all of them have to do with people just choosing not to, but worried about something else and reporting and, I mean, information, rightfully so.
Right.
That's for information that.
And I think that's important to get that information out, because the free and reduced meal plan form stays here. It goes nowhere else. And if we have to verify some sort of data on those on the families, it's randomly chosen out of our NutriKids. We don't pick them. It randomly chooses, and there's millions of ways to prove your income or your lack of income. So we need to get that message out, that what happens once you fill that form out. So that's what we'd like to
Ms. Edelson.
promote.
Could it be part of the enrollment packet?
That's
or-
where we're thinking.
Okay, as opposed to, because with my own kids, I get it in the mail a month or so later. I'm just
Right.
wondering if, and new enrollees also would be.
Yeah, we want to get it in the open enrollment, but we want to start educating our parents on why it's so important to fill out this form, and we continue to do that. So with that, I'm open for any questions.
Mr. Herron.
Yeah, I have one question that you answered earlier for me, but I'm going to ask it also for the public. In the budget, under the fund balance, there was a pretty strong statement that by 2017-18, we'd have to cut $4.3 million. Can you amplify why that no longer is necessary, which is good news,
Yeah.
but it still raises the flag.
And I have a note here to talk about that, but I missed it. So in the adopted budget, there was $4.3 million on the multi-year projections that we thought we were going to have to cut to make the 3%. But in 14-15, we ended positive a surplus of $3.8 million, which offset that amount. So it all flows through in fund balance. So we feel very confident that we won't have to cut. But, 17-18 is a long time out. I mean, we've all been through those tough years where we never thought that what would happen happened. So even 1 year out is pretty iffy.
And just to follow up on that, you also in here, and it's always here, but the salaries are projected to increase by 1.5% each year due to step and column movement. How many of our staff qualify for that 1.5%?
There are still a lot of people who are not at the top of the salary schedule. I'm not going to pick out the
Okay.
numbers,
Is
especially in
1.5
classified.
Is 1.5% on the total classified number in the budget, or is it actually something less than 1.5% on the total?
Well, certain people step different way. I mean, there's the percentages all over the place on those salary schedules. So I was surprised that when we actually pulled the data down and got the actual number, just applying a 1.5% on the total cost of the salaries got me within $30,000, and I was like, I was okay with that.
Good.
Just following up on what Ms. Dimon said, and that is that at the California School Boards Association, I was listening to Ron Bennett talk about how they really do project that in 2 years, districts without a strong reserve will be in a position where they're cutting, because of the STRS increase and the hitting the ceiling on 90% of every dollar, 90 cents on every dollar is currently coming to districts because of Prop 98, and that's going to drop down. And so they're anticipating even within 2 years, 2017 and out, that districts, a lot of districts will be moving into cut mode.
That's what we heard. We heard that the revenue will flatten out unless Prop 30 goes through again, but it will flatten out, and as I said, the STRS and PERS will outpace the COLAs.
Yeah. I'll also note that just in the introduction, it's probably time to update the line that says that there's not a planned school facilities, state bond on school facilities.
Oh, you know what? I'd hate to jinx things like that, because there actually is no bond on, I mean, it's not official.
It's pretty dang close to official. They've qualified.
If it doesn't go, you've jinxed it.
Okay.
The other thing I was going to note, too, that I heard at one of the sessions that I went to, that we have had in the state 72 months of economic growth, something around that number, and that's the significant thing. So for us not to expect that somewhere in the future we're going to have a downturn is irresponsible. Yeah. And I think that in that regard, when we look at these numbers and we look at the reserve, we want to get there, because we know it's going to happen. You know, that wave's going to come crashing, and we better be ready for it. And I would agree with my fellow board members that you know, some of you were around that period of time, and I certainly have not experienced it, and I do not want to see us not prepared for that moment in time, and that would be a terrible thing for us to go through, but we have to be prepared. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Harris.
Can you move forward 2 pages? Well, maybe it's not 2 pages on yours. It's the PERS and SPERS.
Page 16.
Graph?
Graph.
16.
I have it on page 16. Yeah, there it is. This is an important graph for the public, and it affects us dramatically. And maybe Mr. Tay can take 1 second.
Sure. So in 2013-14, our PERS and STRS was $7.5 million, and as they increase to 2021 to $18.7 million, and that represents a total of 39% that is going towards our staff's pensions. And so that is quite a bit. It's 19.1% in STRS and 20% in PERS, which is about 39%. So that's, you know, now it's over a $10 million increase over the next, 15, 16, so 5 years.
That's a lot. Any other comments?
So we're asking for approval on the positive certification of the first in there.
That's correct. So someone would like to make a motion to approve the positive certification of first interim financial report for fiscal year 2015-16.
So move.
I'll second it.
Moved by Mr. Herron, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
And that moves us to the conference agenda. And the first item is presentation of the Measure B 2012 Citizens Parcel Tax Oversight Committee 2014-15 Annual Report.
Thank you very much, Dr. President. We have Cricket Wood, one of our great parent community members from Monroe Elementary School. Are you still at Monroe? All right. Okay, all right, you're moving on. Thank you, Ms. Wood, for being here.
All right. So thank you, board members and Superintendent Cash and Assistant Superintendent Drawdy for being here this evening and serving all of our students in the Santa Barbara Unified School District. I've been a part of the Citizens Parcel Tax Oversight Committee for several years now. Was the chair last year and have a report for you for our 2014-2015. Can I have the next slide? The parcel tax was approved in November 6th of 2012. It's a 4-year tax. It will be ending in 2017, the year we've just been hearing about. It's $48 per parcel, and the purpose is to supplement our technology in elementary schools and enhance classroom music, math, and science. Okay, next slide. The committee is established to monitor the funds and our compliance by the bylaws. Our 2014-2015 committee members were Colin Bell, Susan Case, myself, Frank Stevens, Roberta Wayhell, Lang Saleh, and Laura Burton, CAPS. And we can have our next one. So in 2014-2015, we started off with $100,000 from the previous year, had over $1 million in interest in revenues, and spent over $800,000 on indirect costs and expenditures, and transferred out over $189,000 to charter schools because they are managed independently, to give our ending fund balance for the year of $171,681. The parcel tax funds many teaching positions. Over $480,000 is salaries and benefits to certificated teachers, mostly music teachers, technology integrators, and coordinators. Also, the money goes to math, science, and technology. We had $174,000 allocated to elementary school sites, and $189,000, as I said, to charter schools. This is a breakdown per site of what each site got in that science and technology money, in addition to the music programs. It's based on the average daily attendance. That's why you see a variation between each school site. And we can go ahead and move on. Throughout the course of the year, the committee heard annual reports from each school principal on what was purchased with these funds and how the funds impacted our students. We requested feedback on what was working and where there was room for improvement. Overall, the funds provided music programs, computers, and technology resources that would not otherwise be available at all of these school sites. All the principals expressed appreciation for and support of the parcel tax funded programs, and they shared their goals for the future to continue, expand, and fill the gaps in the current parcel tax funded programs. I want to just conclude with our parcel tax expiring in a couple years. There's many amazing programs that are funded by this. As a parent and PTA board member, I know our personal school could not cover the cost of the programs that we currently have that are funded by the parcel tax. So I appreciate the support of the community in funding the parcel tax, and I encourage the school board and the district to consider how you're going to continue to fund that past 2017. They're very important programs for our students. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions?
Yes. Fortunately, in our long-range planning and in the budget process, almost all of that is included. That's the beautiful part about what's been happening in the last under Dr. Cash the last few years and Mr. Tay. Music programs now are in the budget, and we're going to have a lot of technology already purchased. So I feel that we're pretty much going to be able to move a lot of that stuff into the normal budget, which is great. So I want to thank you. I just have one question, and I presume I know the answer to this, but is the Oversight Committee pretty certain that the funds expended were done in accordance with the parcel tax measure?
Yes, they were presented to us by the principals. We had, as I said, we got a report from principals of each school, including the charter schools, and how the funds were spent, and it all went to music programs, science and technology, and math in the schools.
Ms. Parker.
I'll just follow up on that with the note that we've already said about cutting, just possibly 2 or 3 years out of the reserve drops. And what I so appreciate about the parcel tax in general and the Oversight Committee in particular is that they have made sure that these very important programs, that this funding is going to it. And I know that they're expiring. I just want to be sure that we are thinking about this, because all it's going to take is one recession where we don't have an Oversight Committee because we don't have a parcel tax, and we have to make cuts. And I just hope that we hold these very important programs, as you put it, just as close to our district budget and to the services that we provide for students, even in a downturn. I want to be sure that we can continue to do that. So that's definitely something that I'm thinking about. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
If no more comments, I want to thank you for your service. Next item on the agenda is the Course Access Report 2012-13 through fall of 2015.
But it's part of the LCAP metrics, as board members are aware. And this will be a significant part of the accountability workbook that the CDE will be presenting to the Department of Education in compliance with the new Every Student Succeeds Act that surely will be passed by the Senate this week and signed by the President sometime either this week or the following week. Dr. Drotti.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Good evening, governing board members, President Pedro Paz, Dr. Paz. To assist me in this presentation will be the author of the PowerPoint you have in front of you, which is Dr. Guillermo Juan. As Dr. Cass mentioned, access to a broad course of study is one of the LCAP, the district's LCAP goals. A lot has gone into addressing access issues, and a lot of resources have gone in that way, such as our partnership with Equal Opportunity Schools, our differentiation training that has taken place in the last 3 or 4 years, and also our cultural proficiency initiative. So with that said, Dr. Guillermo Juan will help us interpret the data. We'll progress from access in AP courses and IB courses to dual enrollment and then to honors. And as we go through, I'll address any questions you may have.
Good evening, Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Cash. As Dr. Drotti mentioned, we're going to first look at the course enrollment in AP, Advanced Placement, and International Baccalaureate courses. We have information going back to 12-13 and projections through 15-16, assuming that students enroll in the courses that they are planning to take and complete those at the end of this academic year. So you see that overall, that top line is the number of students, and we've risen steadily and most dramatically last year with a gain of, just, I would say maybe 1,200 students who are enrolled in at least one AP or IB course since 12-13. And then you can see the subgroups in the subsequent lines below. And it's important to note, especially that middle line with the squares, those are our Latino Hispanic students. And when we compare it to the line above with the triangle, we see that the numbers and the lines are closing. And so we'll talk a little bit about proportionality in a moment. But we see that increase in all of our subgroups across the board this year, again, as Dr. Drotti mentioned, our partnership with Equal Opportunity Schools.
Any questions about this data here?
Okay, so I'll move on to the proportionality. And the way that we'll look at this is first by race, ethnicity, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and then we'll have another slide on English learner or English proficiency status and special education status. So there are 3 subgroups in this slide, and so there's a lot going on, but it was our attempt to try and simplify what was very complex. So the yellow lines with the diamonds, those are our Hispanic students, and the solid line is the percent of students who are Hispanic who are taking at least one AP/IB course, and then the dotted yellow line is the percentage of all students in high school who are Hispanic. And so you'll see that the solid yellow line has steadily increased over time, and that dotted yellow line, it's increased a little bit, but it's rather flat. So what that means is that we are increasing the proportionality of Latino Hispanic students in AP/IB courses as we have intended, and so this is very good news. I would say we have that same trend for our socioeconomically disadvantaged students, the lower purple line with the triangles. That's the proportion of students who are enrolled in at least one of these courses, and the purple dotted line is the proportion of the overall high school population. So the gap is narrowing. We're moving in the right direction. We're not there yet. And then for our white students, Our white students are overrepresented and continue to be so, but we see a decline in that top brown line with the squares, which means that as the proportion of Hispanic students and other students of color increase, the proportion of our white students is decreasing. It's important to note that this is still while increasing the overall number of students in each subgroup. So this is very good. We're continuing to increase access for all significant subgroups, and those numbers are going up, and our trends are going the right direction, but we're not quite there yet.
Maybe at this time I can explain a little bit of how we were able to identify the students to go into this APIB courses for the public. Our partnership with Equal Opportunity Schools has been very critical in this work. What they do is they come to our system, they evaluate and profile the students that are in the AP and IB courses. So there's a survey, there's a process they take our students through. From that process, they actually identify some indicators of all students that exist in our system. And then they then go ahead and take all students through the same process and find students that match the students, match the profile of students identified in the AP and IB courses. We then go after those students and ask them, inquire or ask them if they're interested in taking AP and IB courses. Sometimes we get some have volunteered to go in and be in the courses, and some declined. But the idea is we at least have students we can look at to talk to in getting in these AP and IB courses.
The last set of subgroups that we're going to look at in terms of APIB enrollment have to do with our English learners and reclassified students and our special education students. So I'll start with special education, which is in yellow, and it's actually the bottom two lines with the triangles. And so we see the bottom line is the number, I'm sorry, not the number, it's the percent of students who are special ed enrolled in at least one APIB course. Juxtaposed to the yellow dotted line, which is their proportion of the overall high school enrollment. So although we see an uptick in this current year, we also see that we have a rise in the proportion of high school students who are identified as special ed. So that gap, unfortunately, is not closing, even though our the representation in the class is increasing. Then I'd like to talk about the English learner and reclassified students. I think we have a really great success here with the brown arrow at the top with our reclassified students. We reclassified, as we discussed earlier, over 1,000 students last year. And we see that this year we've met proportionality for reclassified students in these advanced courses, and that's reflected by the meeting of the solid brown line and the dotted brown line at the top. And so that's a great success that we take great pride in. We also see then a dip in the proportion of students who are classified as English learners. Because it's an inverse relationship, those students have now moved over to being reclassified. You can't really see the percent of students who are English learners in these courses. It's about the same as the special education. So we did see a rise in their proportionality as well in the enrollment, along with a slight dip in the proportion. But again, we want to just celebrate the work that's been done around the reclassification of our students with regards to English language proficiency and their access to advanced coursework. Would you like to add anything, Dr. Andrade, before I move on to dual enrollment?
Let's move on, unless board members have questions.
I'd just like to remind everyone that reclassification was, when we changed the criteria, very controversial. And a lot of good work was done by Dr. Ramirez in that area. And here are the fruits of that hard work. Great stuff.
All right, this slide shows the enrollment in a dual enrollment course, both those taken at Santa Barbara City College and those offered on our campuses for the past 3 academic years. We're not able to include this year due to how we receive data from Santa Barbara City College, so the 15-16 data will be reported on at the close of that year, so probably next fall. And we see, you know, I would say generally a flat trend in terms of the numbers. We're hoping that those do go up. But it's fairly similar trend for all subgroups. And then we also see, you know, not a lot of movement here as we did in AP courses with our Hispanic, white, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students. So this is an area of work for us.
A question?
Yes.
On 2 slides back where you showed.
This one?
Why do you think it dipped down 2014, 15, pretty much across the board, except for the one purple line second from the bottom? Or
Dr. Doty, I mean, I would say it's a dip, but it's fairly small. So I like to look at data preferably in a 5-year window because things are going to naturally fluctuate at that level. So I would encourage us not to read too much into that, but I don't know if Dr. Drawdy, you'd like to respond to Ms. Idelson's.
Yeah, I won't be able to give it definitively why it dropped, but you know, this is an area that we have to really study in terms of how many teachers actually we have on site versus at City College, transportation issues. So there's just a lot we have to look into to better understand.
I know it's gotten exceedingly complicated to register for the most part, and the classes are limited, but I'm curious why that year, I mean, it seemed to be going, you know, substantially up until, until 14, 15, but okay.
Well, it'd be good to know how many high school students we had, too. The end might be different.
Right.
So, and what the actual numbers are. What is it? Is it 1,700 and 1,610? Is it 1,700 and 1,650?
Because also summer, let's see, the double summer session, that increased also, which widened a lot more admission, I think, to City College. But.
And I don't think this includes the summer school.
That's correct,
this includes fall and spring semesters.
Okay. And no summer at all?
Correct.
Okay.
And my understanding is that the first time the double session happened was
this summer.
This last summer. Right.
Okay, so this does help us look at it in relation to the proportion, at least of the subgroups. And so, we see, did I already present this slide and then we went backwards? I feel like I'm having deja vu.
You did.
Okay, thank you.
Go to
it's a flat line. Okay, this is where we were. Thank you. And here we see a steady rise, so we'll start with special education in the yellow, a steady rise in the proportion of students who are taking at least one of these courses, but it's coupled with that jump in the percent of students in high school who are identified as special education. If we look at the purple lines with our English learners, unfortunately we do see a dip, but the dip looks fairly, the slope of that dip from 13-14 to 14-15 is in line with the decrease in the proportion of students who are identified as English learners. And then with our reclassified students, we see that it kind of holds steady despite that spike. So again, as we mentioned earlier, this is an area for us to look into and understand and unpack in the future. Would you like to add anything before I move on to honors overall?
Yeah, go ahead and move on.
Okay. So these last slides look at enrollment in honors, at least one or more honors courses, grades 7 through 12. So this includes APIB, this includes dual enrollment, and this is really extending, as I said, down to or through 7th grade. And so we see this. Like I said earlier, we see this fluctuation, and that's fairly common when you look at data over a longitudinal period. I would say in general, it looks to me, when I look at it, I would interpret the slopes to be fairly flat over time with the exception of our reclassified students, and that is probably due to the increase in the identification of reclassified students last year. And not a lot of movement, unfortunately, with the racial and ethnic subgroups. A good upward trend for Hispanic students, from below 35% to 40% this year. So we're going in the right direction. But I think it's a slower climb because we are looking at all honors courses, including our junior high schools. And again, to end on an up note.
If I just may jump in there, though,
yes.
Dr. Paz, just pointing out that if you had looked at slides that predated 12-13, that we were coming from a point of about 18% Hispanic enrollment. So it's slower now,
yes.
but we really did have a dramatic jump.
Yes, thank you for adding that historical context. I think we want to definitely celebrate what we've accomplished over a longer range of time than is able to be reported on in this slide. So thank you very much. Okay, and to end on an up note, again, we see proportionality or near proportionality for our reclassified students overall in our honors courses. So this is something, again, that we're really proud of and speaks to the work that we did last year that we've already discussed. And with special education, we are seeing an upward trend, so this is good, but there is, again, an upward trend in the percentage of students who are identified as special ed in secondary. So with that, I will conclude my piece and turn it back to Dr. Adrani and Dr. Cash.
Just to add one thing about the honors, the placement, the criteria in establishing the criteria to establish placement in honors is much more difficult than AP, primarily because in AP there is an external organization that establishes rigor. Because of that, it's pretty clear to understand what students need to be successful in a specific AP class or IB class. In terms of honors, there isn't that external assessment. So it has to do with us as a district establishing what rigor is, and that takes conversation, and right now we're in the process of cleaning that up, but as you can see, it will be a challenging conversation trying to establish that district-wide. So, but we'll get it done.
Any comments, questions? I'm going to take the opportunity to ask the board if we could table either item 3 or item 5. What is your preference? No preference? Ms. Parker.
Well, I suspect that item 5 would take 5 minutes. So if you want to substantively cut down some time, that it's probably going to be
item 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would suggest that we table item 3 for a future agenda.
We'll put it on January 12th.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Cash. That moves us to item number 4, discussion of local control accountability plan, strategic plan alignment.
And we get the dynamic duo of Dr. Ben Drotti and Dr. Raul Ramirez. And before they get started, that great data that we just saw in relationship to disproportionality and proportionality is really the result of incredible work Ben Drotti has done with the secondary schools in our district in particular. That's a hard pull to get to where we're at. It requires changes in values, changes in beliefs, changes in attitudes, and a lot of process with teachers. And Ben has done everything that's necessary to make that happen, and he deserves all the credit for leading that charge in our district. So I want to thank you and acknowledge your hard work.
Thank you.
Get on to this one.
Yeah.
I just want to add quickly, yes, thank you very much for all that work. I think it's a lot of work behind the scenes, and we see the work. And Dr. Guillermo Wang, about your work in putting all the data together, because that's not an easy task as well. So thank you both.
Absolutely. So at a previous board meeting, I presented to you the process by which the district will engage in to align the strategic plan aims with actions associated with the local control accountability plan. In that, we also presented the LCAP actions aligned with AIM 1, which was developing life, career, and college-ready students. Tonight, I and Dr. Ramirez will be presenting the LCAP actions alignment with aims 2 and 3 of the strategic plan, which is to ensure student, family, and community engagement and organizational transformation. So the first slide you see here is we'll focus on aim 2, which is basically to student, family, and community engagement, and our ability. In SBUSD, student, family, and community engagement is defined as our ability to develop meaningful opportunities that will empower parents to participate in their children's education, become an integral hub of community life to provide open space and access to resources, including basic needs that each student requires to be successful, and then create a reciprocal active engagement between students, family, school, and community with emphasis on civic participation. This is an important slide because us having a common understanding of what I just read will be what is decided when people start wrestling over strategies or resources. So as we go through this process of identifying some of the LCAP actions, what is kept and what is it is eliminated and what is added will have to be compared against these values here. With that said, when we go to the next slide. So in our current LCAP, we have these strategies exist in the current LCAP. So what you see is this is in alignment to the strategic plan. As to establish a process to evaluate how stakeholders, student, parents, staff perceive the school system. We have our first iteration of that we thought has been pretty instrumental. I'm sure we'll share the information in another time. The district's wellness committee has active participation by representatives from every school, stakeholders in the community, as well as staff. That's an area we have to work on. Each site will develop an action plan to address school connectedness based on their survey results. The action plans will be described in the site's single plan for student achievement. And if you go through every school student achievement, you'll see the action plans that were developed based on that. Also under there, we have each site will implement the language access protocols developed by Education Services. Every site actually does have a plan right now. We will allocate funding to support the DLAC programs. We've done that successfully. And we also develop a district-wide process to monitor parent participation in parent organizations with respect to subgroup participation. And that's an area we still have to work on. If you can go to the next slide. So another area is to make sure school community, maybe Dr. Ramirez, you can go over this one then, and we'll just give you a chance to introduce.
Good evening, Board President, Dr. Paz. Yes, if I could just backtrack for just a moment. When we talk about language access, that was the work that was carried over from last year that Dr. Mora has carried forward with the help of our language access unit, and also has now become melded with the parent engagement framework that we presented some months ago. That's continuing to really pick up a lot of momentum. So that was an attempt to really determine what the main elements of parent engagement would be, because we do want to move beyond participation. We recognize that participation is important. It's a measure that can be quantified, but we want to move into trying to somehow quantify and find a way to measure connectedness by way of engagement, which is very difficult to do. So it really is much more multidimensional when you're talking about how to really reach parents and families where they are, and based on their respective needs and wants, really, from the school. So we recognize that language access is a big component of that. So slowly but surely, what's coming together is a real robust plan that allows us to really begin to identify our strengths and future areas of growth as it relates to connecting and outreaching with our parents successfully. So the DLAC program is part of that, or the DLAC itself is part of that, and within that there are a lot of different components, including the long-term purpose or goal to establish a real robust EL master plan. We have elements of it that are emerging, but educating parents and ensuring that parents have confidence in what we're doing is a big component of that. But this year, just to build out our DLAC program, we've successfully, through partnerships and internally, we've carried out a number of, we've carried out ELAC orientations at every single site. So that is a dramatic departure and improvement over just the last several years. And we're doing this with two goals in mind. Number one is to ensure that parents have the right information and can find themselves as a critical component of and part of the decision-making process, but also to increase the engagement between our site leadership, site staff, and the parents that we serve. So it's got a number of different advantages of moving in this direction. And another component to this is the fact that this is a very laborious process, and it's one that requires a lot of planning, a lot of forethought. So hopefully one of the things that you started to see and started to see more clearly is that these things are starting to really show up in site plans. And there are goals and actions that are really emerging out of a desire to follow and really take heed to the framework that was developed. But yes, to move forward, we do want to make sure that our schools are seen as community centers, and we have two, of course, building out with the expansion of the Community of Schools project. And we have that model at La Cumbre, and we have it at Franklin. Franklin programs are expanding based on the model set out at La Cumbre with the goal of expansion into Goleta. Our parents over in Goleta started asking a lot of questions like, why not us? What's there for us? How can we be a partner in this as well? And knowing that, and that's going to emerge or lead us into a conversation around better partnerships and conversations with our feeder districts as well, because we recognize that that partnership needs to just continue to strengthen in order to ensure parents and families have a clear pathway from their schools into our schools, because we are part of the same community.
Dr. Armendariz,
yes.
I had a question about that. I think that's an important point to bring out, especially in two regards. One is that when you look at Goleta, especially the downtown area of Goleta, there is no schools. Everyone is either bused to a different part of the community. That's a critical piece to remember. But it's also that same acknowledgement also applies to downtown Santa Barbara. Mm-hmm. We don't have a school downtown Santa Barbara. And I think that's another point to kind of remember. So how do we do that in those both those locations and try to present to the community sort of a community center when there is no logical place in that regard for it to be? You know, there isn't a school. And so that's something to kind of think about in terms of transportation and access and all those pieces. I'm sure you're thinking about that, but it's just occurred to me that same situation occurs in both areas.
We're looking at the old Goleta School on Hollister, the community center, as a likely place to I mean, we were thinking just what you were thinking.
Absolutely, and you know, we do have a parent resource center here at the district, which has built out. We're trying to get more and more publicity, but of course, the parents want to be where the children are, and that certainly provides us with some challenges in ensuring that parents in terms of ensuring that parents are actively participating, but all those factors will definitely be considered, including issues of transportation. That's something that we've considered just part of our regular day program, and how to establish that. And sites are becoming more fluid in their ability to connect with one another. Part of the reason behind La Cumbre being successful is because it is it's in such close proximity to where elementary parents could access services and the community there after hours, including the supper program. So those are things that are building out in very organic ways, but also as a response to what parents are citing as needs. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Thank you very much. And of course, my past position, which was Director of EL and Parent Engagement Services, continues to just move forward at a tremendous rate with the leadership of Dr. Mora, who has been added a totally new element to it, and carrying just those initiatives that started emerging last year and ensuring that those systems are really solid and just become a real, just a part of what we do, and not necessarily something that is viewed as anything new. It just becomes a natural part of what we focus on. So as part of that also is allocating, again, looking at expansion of the Parent Resource Center here at the district office, and ensuring that we have bilingual staff that is able to meet the needs of parents. And also, one of the things that we continue to develop are those processes by which we gather information from parents, and we gather input and gather just a real perspective on how our schools are managing their instructional programs, how they're managing their resources, and how they are setting forth goals that are based on student achievement and growth. So those are all pieces that are actually very critical to, and very much a part of the parent engagement framework that you've seen in the past and that we'll revisit in the future.
So on to aim number 3. This is organizational transformation in a strategic plan. And the district's definition of that will be is our ability to always put students first, ability to embrace the diversity of our schools and community as one of our greatest strengths, and our ability to communicate with transparent and accessible information. So, like I said, all actions associated with that aim will be measured against these values here. And like I said, it will take conversation to establish what that is. So in terms of what's in the current LCAP, that's aligned to aim 3. If you go to the next slide. We'll continue to the expansion of restorative approaches to the rest of the schools. Right now, we're involved in case studies and trying to understand at a much deeper level how the program is going, so we can make adjustments and expand to the rest of the schools. Schools who have implemented already will evaluate the effectiveness of reducing suspensions. That's a process we're going through right now. We continue the position of elementary counselors and social workers. And that has been something that elementaries have needed, and as they start working on restorative approaches, they'll be the social workers and counselors will be very instrumental in that work. Develop and implement a district-wide data gathering and input process and infrastructure to better understand the restorative approaches results. Dr. Grandma Wan has been very instrumental, not only in so many different areas, but having her here has been awesome. So we can now see. I told her that today. Before you this year, we operated almost half blind, but now we're able to see. So, so everybody's very happy to have her here. Continue to support the student at risk outreach liaison. We have 2 of those two staff members, a female and male, in our district, and also determine a formal outreach and mentoring program for underrepresented pupils. That's something we need to work on. If you go to the next slide, I'll let you take that one to Mr. Dr.
Yeah, as part of again this aim. looking at continuing to monitor district safety plans. That's another big element. We want to continue to ensure that those are kept current, and incorporating AHA program in the high school's RA process. So one of the things that you'll start to notice kind of recurring, not just in this presentation but in the future, is you'll start to see things start to really come together and start to intertwine with one another, so that this is our effort to really draw focus and attention to leverage those resources to ensure that these plans and initiatives aren't viewed unto themselves, but really are viewed under having a lot of commonality, and that is another way in which we hope that moving in this direction will draw us into just a real tight focus on what it is that we're looking to accomplish, what it is that where our needs lie, and how those resources that we have available can be used and better maximized. Canine detection as a deterrent for drug use. I know that's been a topic of discussion in other board meetings. And developing an action plan to ensure a sense of safety based on survey results. So again, our effort is to, as part of this, again, thematically, is to increase our data literacy, but also really be more responsive to data and making data-based, data-informed decisions, as opposed to operating on past practices alone or feeling our way through. Really what you'll see, and unfortunately we weren't able to present on the continuum today, but you're going to see that as part of our attempt to use data and information, qualitative, quantitative, in a number of different ways to inform what we do, to give us better, more closer understanding of whether we're being successful and whether our implementation is appropriate. The reallocation of portions of the DP Expedition Academy to LCFF and expansion of the cohort to accept more students. That is something that also has been rolled into LCFF, or I'm sorry, LCAP.
So in embracing the diversity of our schools and community as one of our greatest strengths, one of the areas, strategies we identified under that will be to develop and implement a cultural proficiency rubric for identifying instructional materials that align with state adaptive standards. We're in the process of still developing that piece there, but we think our cultural proficiency rubric will be a powerful document to help our organization have conversations that are necessary in terms of in the area of cultural proficiency. We need to complete the alignment of human resources recruiting practices to ensure candidates reflect demographics of the district. We are continuing to send human resources officials and different district personnel to different conferences that exist out there for us to access students that access college students that may be interested in coming to Santa Barbara. So that's a big area of focus for us.
And one of the things I want to jump in on these next two that is happening is Mr. Trina and Ms. Peak are attending the California Association of Bilingual Educators along with other staff. And this really was launched by Ms. Rodriguez, who isn't an HR specialist, but was really interested in finding special ed teachers who were bilingual, bicultural. And we've followed up with sending our whole HR team on to that conference in order for us to recruit bilingual educators to come and work in our district. Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank Ms. Rodriguez for making that happen. And the second one, Hispanic serving colleges and universities, I also want to remind board members that I think we're still only one of 5 school districts in California that's a member of the Hispanic serving colleges and universities as a K-12 partner. And it's a partnership that I'm very proud of and one that we know is going to bear fruit for our community in the future.
So if we go on to the next slide. So communicate with transparent and accessible information. So develop a process to monitor counseling checks on each individual pupil's schedule for each semester for A through G completion. We are excited about the purchase or the use of Naviance, or the introduction of Naviance into our system, 712. And Naviance is a guidance counseling tool that will really unveil what's in our system to our parents, to our students, and to our teachers, so that way they can all serve as advocates for planning. And more to come on that. So,
well, our PAC Parent Advisory Committee will get a look at Naviance tomorrow night, and that'll be good.
But at some point, I'm sure we'll be presenting it up here too. So.
Yep.
Each site will implement the language access protocols developed by the Education Services. I think I'll let Dr. Ramirez talk about that because it's been very successful. He's the person that really got that going, so I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, the next couple of items we've touched on previously, but again, those are very much a part of the broader parent engagement framework that we presented, and that we will continue to carry on and try to find a way to really bring back information as far as the status of implementation. A part of that also I want to add is that we are looking for parents to have input on that. So that's an area that has been already, or a document that has really been that's already been brought forth to DLAC, and Dr. Mora is actively looking to establish a parent committee, a well-rounded parent committee that can provide additional input to give us really that parent perspective that will allow us to understand whether we are headed in the right direction and what areas we should really focus or where our priorities really need to lie. And another big piece that I really want to say is that this is with all of these initiatives, we are really, they all have components in both elementary and secondary. At another date, we can talk about what our emerging plans are for restorative approaches at the elementary. We've had just recently a discussion around what that may look like moving forward, and how to ensure that our, because it will look different, but we want to make sure that all of our schools have that at the forefront.
And then finally, as you can see, all the strategies that are in this LCAP and in our aims, I'm sure from this point on, a lot of people will be dissecting Dr. Cash's legacy in the district. But if you look at what's listed here, I mean, it takes courage to do these things. And I'm sure he'll tell you he took some flack for some of the things that we put that's listed here on the LCAP. But he has been very instrumental in us actually getting these items publicly even talked about, and most districts are not going to be touched this. So, and lastly, I'd like to thank you for really supporting him and us in really getting this work done.
Thank you, Dr. Durante and Dr. Ramirez. Do we have any questions, board members? No questions, but thank you both for all the work that you did in putting this together, and I know it's a lot of work, so thank you once again.
So up next will be AIM 4, and then the fifth goal for the LCAP, which is early childhood education or early learning. So
nice. We are moving to.
I do have a question, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
How will this? So this is being shared with us in this format now. Does it just stay in this format? I mean, I'm just.
Yeah, so the first, I want to remind you there's two things taking place right now. First is the alignment of the strategic plan to the LCAP, and then starting tomorrow, tomorrow night, we'll start presenting the actual process of engaging the community about next year. So these two are going to merge at some point. Okay. So what you're going to see before you next time in the finished product, these will be the goals instead of all the different goals that we have used in the past. So,
all right, thank you.
Yeah, it is really bureaucratically complicated, unfortunately, but it's the two things merging, as Ben just described very well. We're presenting the needs in hopes of developing the plan, and he and Dr. Ramirez have reshaped the template of the plan to be aligned with the goals so that they'll fit hand in glove by the time you get to see the LCAP for 16-17 in the spring.
Well, I'm looking forward to I don't even know how to imagine it. That's why I'm asked. I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. Thanks for all your work.
I think all of us will be very interested in that part. So we are moving to item 5, first reading Administrative Regulation 5142, safety. Dr. Cash.
Dr. Drotti will take this one again. That's why he's sitting up here.
So in a previous board meeting, you directed me to bring back language to address the issues of lab safety. And this is basically what I'm proposing here. If you flip to the second page, we crossed out the language from the old AR 5142, and added the green. So this is the first reading, so I'll wait your questions.
Ms. Parker.
I so appreciate, for the sake of all of our students and teacher safety, the work that you've been doing on this, and this is exactly what I was thinking of when we talked about this originally. Just because you have a science credential does not mean that you have any training whatsoever in lab safety, and certainly in how to interact with students around it. So I think that this is really important. And my just super quick question is, are you making any progress in terms of what actual training program might come in?
Yes, I've actually been in conversation with CISC, our insurance carrier. So they recommended several trainings. They're used to helping our the plant or custodian staff in several online trainings, and they actually have one specifically for labs, for science labs, and also the county event. The Ventura County Office of Education has 2 trainings in the spring, so we'll give the option of the online training, also another option to send teachers to the county office in Ventura. But either way, we want all science teachers trained by the spring, so when they start school in the fall, they'll be certified.
Any other questions?
No, I'm just going to suggest that it come back on consent.
Great, thank you.
All right. Thank you. That brings us to item F5 that we pulled from the consent agenda.
Thank you. I just have a couple comments on it and thought.
Mr. Hare.
And thoughts. If you look at the changes of priority, it's siblings, then it goes to children full-time Somerville City College, and then it goes to our own school, OAS. I'm curious to why we're giving preference to City College employees versus our own students in a lottery. I would suggest we change B to C and C to B. And that's my one suggestion. Is there an answer or reason we did that as far as?
No, there's none. I would agree with you.
Yeah, we agree. When you raised
oversight.
that, both Ms. Wagenack and I said, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, and the second thing is, if you look at the paragraph right under that, there's a whole bunch of language talking about, in essence, the reasons, special academic, varsity athletic. Those words were put in order to allow some grandfather of students when we got rid of interdistrict. But they're meaningless now, I think. Almost that whole paragraph is sort of meaningless because we don't have any violation of terms and conditions of interdistrict transfer agreements. That's all phased out, and in fact, this document right here eliminates any agreements. I think that whole paragraph can be modified quite a bit, and a lot of the sentences just dropped. That would be a suggestion I would like to have looked at, or if there's any thought.
Right, well, and since I will need to bring it back on consent with the change of OAS in January, I can research this and bring those changes back as well.
I mean, that's my concern. Anybody else have a thought on that? If you just start unsatisfactory performance, and then you go on, or non-participation in the special academic or varsity athletic program that formed the basis for admission, which no longer exists. And so those kind of words can be purged from that. I can send you the ones I have that I have marked off, just if you want to use it if anybody's in agreement with that.
That's fine.
Could we get, we're kind of backs against the wall on a time frame issue in relationship to...
You guys can take it, do what you want with it, and I'm happy to approve it tonight.
Because I'm not certain that this language change will, even if we bring it back and you say, well, we wanted it to, this word taken out, not this word.
No.
But we would like to be able to move forward with the timeframes that we have so that we can inform our parents as to when the windows start.
I agree.
And all that stuff.
Yes, I'm happy for you to make the changes that you think are appropriate.
Right, I
Okay.
think Dr.
That would
Cash
be
is
great
right.
if
We
we
can
could do
change that
that.
at any time. Just pull it out later on.
Could we then, I suggest that we direct staff to make those changes and...
Let me have one more.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. The third, under terms of transfer, and you've assured me of the intent of this, Ms. Wagonett, but it seems to me by taking out the application every year and adding the statement, shall not be required to reapply for an interdistrict transfer and shall be allowed to continue to attend the school in which he or she is enrolled so long as the student maintains good standing in relation to attendance and behavior. My concern with that is if next year we have one student, one opening at a school, and so we put an interdistrict transfer there, and then the next year we have 3 students who want to get into that school because they moved into that we'd have no way to kick that student out, and you assured me that, yeah, we could, but I look at that statement as a pretty, seems a promise. You know, once you're in, you don't have to apply again. And we're going to, if you keep good standing and attendance and behavior, you're here for the duration of your education. It seems like a very strong statement if we don't really mean it. That's my concern.
Ms. Parker.
Yeah, and I would agree just that there's some language from the intra-district that we could pull over and just there, just to make that clarification that it's
In terms of
still
capacity.
It's a capacity issue.
Given available capacity.
Yeah.
I don't like to see a promise like that if that's not our intent. So with those comments and potential changes, I'll leave it to staff to make the appropriate changes, and I'll move approval of F5 under those conditions.
Second. Easily done.
We have a motion by Mr. Herron and a second by Ms. Parker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item K, coming events.
Well, we have the Milpas Street Parade, excuse me. It starts at 5:30. We'd like you there between 5 and 5:10 or so. Ms. Kiani will have a T-shirt.
You think so? Yes.
And we will get to you the exact location on Milpas that you need to report to prior to Saturday at 5:30.
Great.
I'll just mention again what I mentioned earlier. There are 2 performances of music by ICANN, and to emphasize, they love to see our support because they do an awful lot for this school district. So if you get the opportunity to attend one of those or the ICANN art shows and show the thanks that we have for ICANN, I think it'd be appreciated.
Ms. Limon.
And one more thing, since this is our last meeting in December, I do know that on December 20th, Sunday, December 20th, the Eyeglass Factory, which has generously given to our community glasses, particularly for students in our district, will be doing, again, their free eyeglasses for students and families. So it's the student and family can come, they'll do an eye exam, they'll give free glasses. So that's on Sunday, December 20th, and I believe it's in the afternoon. I don't know the time, but I can forward that information to the district so we can have it and share it with our schools.
Great.
Thank you. Any other coming events? Any future agenda items the board would like to have?
I have
Mr.
2.
Yes.
I enjoy reading Dan Walters once in a while, and he had an article just recently that sort of brought up a topic in my mind that I've thought about, and I don't know the answer to it, but I think we've talked about it with City College, this whole idea of remediation rates. And maybe for one of our joint meetings with City College, we could have a conversation on how are our students doing when they get into City College? Do we have a remediation problem? because you hear about it in the news. I mean, we have writers who talk about it. I'd like to see maybe that on the City College agenda, but Dr. Cash could follow up with that. And the other is, I'd like to put on the agenda a reminder that sometime early next year, we give some discussion at least to maybe changing the calendar to start a week later.
Yeah, we meet with SBTA next week on a regular negotiation session, and we have Mr. John Houchin, the SBTA president, right here, and I'll just say publicly that I'm going to plan to reach out to him and his team and having a calendar discussion. I know how controversial it is for members of his unit, our teachers, and our community, so we'll see where we can go.
I think it's worth a discussion. I don't have any conclusion or any thoughts. No, nothing. You know, the heat's the heat, and but we did get a lot of comments.
Yes.
And 1,000 fans.
Yes, Ms. Iman.
And I'm looking at our next meetings. We also have one on the 19th, is that correct?
Yes, there will be a special board meeting on the 19th. I was going to, at the end, ask what time would you like that scheduled for?
What day is it?
It's a Tuesday.
And what is it for?
That will be for your interviews of the search firms.
Well, how much time do you think we're going to take for that particular meeting?
Depends on how many you decide to interview. I would say 45 to 60 minutes per firm, including your questions and discussion.
Board, do you have a preference?
And that's what day?
The 19th.
The 19th.
That's a
Tuesday.
Do the interviews happen in open session?
Yes, they do.
Then I would suggest sometime after 5, but...
I'm not sure what I'm looking at, but my calendar says the 19th is a Saturday.
January.
Oh, January.
Yeah.
I thought, why are you talking about it now?
Because Ms. Limon started looking at the January meetings.
Because it says the next meetings, and I noticed that the 19th wasn't on here, so I asked about the 19th.
Okay.
I would say 5 o'clock.
Okay. We'll make sure that happens.
Any other future agenda items? If not, I'd like to adjourn the meeting for December the 8th.
It's nice being at this end.
All right, good job.